Hey everyone, welcome to the Eye Opener Society. Actually, welcome back to the Eye Opener Society. We want to thank everybody for listening into our show and everybody that joins us in here every Monday when our shows are released. You have me, Gary.
Me, Hannah. Hey.
We are your hosts, and we wanted to tell you we released this show like on all major platforms. We were doing it separately or independently on YouTube as well, where we were putting videos. We just actually went officially moving our podcast on, distributing it onto YouTube, and it has blown up. Hannah, the numbers are crazy.
Yeah,
I
it's
showed you them.
insane.
So I appreciate everybody that listens. Appreciate everybody that hits play. Don't forget, if you like us, share us. It's the best way to help us out, because we could always use money. And if you want to donate to us, just go to our website, eyeopenersociety.podbean.com. And at the top of that webpage, we have buy us a coffee, or you could buy us a pizza, whatever it is you want to buy us. But that's our donation place if you want to donate us. And there's two sponsors as well. There's Reaper Apparel. Reaper Apparel, great clothing line there.
hmm
And also Bear Blends if you're into smoking all natural cigarettes, no additives, no fillers. Even if you don't want to smoke them, you could burn them as incense, you could use them as teas. Fantastic stuff. Visit them, and we get a little kickback from that if you do purchase anything. So those are the three ways to help us out. But the fourth way is free. You don't even got to buy anything, just listen to us and share us. Find us also on Facebook as well under Eye Opener Society. So welcome back to the show. Hannah and myself are here, and also we have Brittany as well. Brittany, if you remember, she was on the listener episode, and she's going to be with us from time to time. Actually, I'm trying to get her into the podcasting, so this is her whole debut, basically.
Yeah.
But when we did the listener episode, I don't know what it was. She was on the Facebook Live when
Yeah.
she brought it up when we were talking about suggestions and all that. And Brittany had suggested a really good theme or a topic. So that's why we brought her on, because we're going to do this whole show, based on what she wants to ask. It's about coping and, how people deal with certain things and basically how we deal with certain things. So, Brittany, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Hey, we're doing fine. Thank you again for
Yeah.
coming on the show. Thank you for being part of the Eye Opener Society. It's pretty exciting having a third person here. It makes I kind of feel more chill and laid back now because somebody's going to interview us and we don't got to really.
I
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
So all the pressure's on Brittany now. It's pretty cool. I like it. How you feel, Brittany?
I'm feeling good, and thank you for having me. It's always an honor, so
Oh, that's so
I'm
nice.
excited.
Aw.
That's nice. Thank you very much. Yeah, we really did. We thought the idea that you had brought up on our Facebook Live was really good. That's why I
hmm
jumped on the opportunity to say, hey, let's go ahead and record an episode, and just having you, because we could have sat here and made a show out of it, but it was your idea. And I think it's sometimes nice to actually see it from the other person's side. So
hmm
you can run this whole as an interview, as a conversation, however it is you want to do it. So what was your idea? Explain to us again what you wanted us to do.
So I had somebody who had sent me a quote. I think we all have that one friend that is kind of there for you and knows what you need. And they sent me one that was a different perspective, and it essentially said to quit dwelling on the past. The more that you think or talk about your past, your problems, or your pain, it makes it grow. So it, to me, one, it got me thinking, is that true? And two, I also, just listening from the things that you both discussed, you both have very different perspectives on life, similar but different. You've gone through different things, different traumas. Um, so I wanted to know, basically, Hannah, with you and the traumas that you've done, or I'm sorry, not traumas that you've done, but the traumas that you've gone through. How did, how, hearing this, how does it make you feel?
I think with me, I understand it. Like, you know, the whole aspect of, the more you think about it, the more pain it brings you, because it's just constantly in your mind, it's altering your brain chemistry. And I get that at a certain point in time, you have to let the thoughts and, the reoccurring moments like in your mind you have to let them subside and, let them go so you can attempt to move on and move forward. But for me, I kind of can go backwards on that quote and just say, like, sometimes it's very beneficial to really, you know, put yourself through, not necessarily put yourself through it again, but kind of put yourself step by step what you went through. So that way, you're aware of, the situation or trauma that you survived. Because I think it's important. It's, of course, I don't want to relive the things that I've been through, but I think sometimes it's important for me to take a look back just so I can see how far I've come and how far, how I survived the things that I did.
And Gary, I know that you're a first responder, you've held other jobs as well, and you've seen some very traumatic things. For you, you have opened up, but you're more one of those ones that it happened. And I could be wrong with reading this, but it happened. I'm moving forward. I'll work through it. But how do you cope with those types of things? Do you think about them, or is it like once you've processed it, it's out of your head and you continue just forward with your day or your year, your month?
I usually use coping. I use seriously dark, sick humor. It's my biggest coping skill for, to get past all that. I've developed really thick skin over the years from some of the things that I have seen. Um, Mostly back when I was dealing with all that sort of stuff. I got into the field because I wanted to see that. I don't know if it's because I'm just a sick individual or what, but I was kind of drawn to it. I was kind of the blood and guts kind of chaser. I wasn't into the sick calls. I wasn't into all the pushing medications. I was into, bandaging up and fixing. And that's what I liked. But yeah, you, I don't think I was ever, every time you went out there, you'd seen something else. Everything was kind of repetitive call wise, but you do run into some things that you just were not prepared for. And like I say, when you see it, sometimes it's just horrific. And I'm not even talking about the blood and guts aspect. That's easy. It's sometimes it's the humanity and just what people are capable of. And when you see that, you need to develop that thick skin. And the way I did it and the way, people I worked with, we just used a really serious, sick sense of humor. It was very dark and black. And I still have that, sense about me. I also don't believe I was really bothered by much. I can recall two specific incidences that really sent me over the edge because I just really wasn't prepared for it. I don't know if anybody wants to hear the story. I mean, I'm on the mic now.
Is it the one on the elevator?
No, not the one on
Okay.
the elevator. No, because that one didn't bother me. There was two incidences I've seen that I think take the cake, and that really shook me up to a point where I was like, "Whoa, I'm not gonna." I had to walk away. I had to go through a crisis intervention that New York City had. They brought people in, but the first one was, you see, this was the Bronx, and this was a whole drug cartel thing. And again, not so much the blood and guts, but the humanity of it. When you rip off another drug dealer, I guess, the payment is pretty strong. So instead of attacking the person that, I guess, robbed from you, stole from, whatever it was, they went after the family.
Mm.
And they lined up the entire family and a couple of friends that were hanging out with them. And I'm talking about kids in rage from, I think it was like 9 to about 7, 8 months. Got them all down on their knees and shot them all in the back of the head. The youngest one, they left. And like when we got there, the amount of blood that was like, rolling out into the hallways, we had to like jump from the entranceway to the living room where the murders took place up onto the bed just because it was just so thick. but they were all, and nobody was viable except the worst was like the youngest, who was still in crawling stage. So that's what I'm thinking, like 6, 7 months or so, was alive under the body, swimming through like brains and blood and stuff. So we dealt with it, but during that moment, you just don't really, you're not processing it. You're just going through the, your emotions and what to do. And it wasn't until like, I think somebody that one of the medics or something, I guess, seen it and told me, take a step to the side, and it wasn't until after it was done, I realized like and again, not the blow. It was just, this is what humanity is capable of. And that hit me hard. And it was just, it went away. Like I think about it now and it doesn't bother me as much. But do you know what really bothers me? And this is the thing, and I've seen it once, and I don't know why it bothers me to a core, to the part where I would be choked up, and I was choked up when I dealt with it. There was a couple, they've been together, I guess, forever. They were in their upper 80s, 90s, and the wife had passed away. So, her husband was still there, and the husband just looked at me and said, "Is she gone?" And you're looking and you're like, what am I going to say? And I started to cry. I was like, it's just something about that. When you're with somebody for so long that you love so much and then they're gone, it's just that solid realization that that person is gone. Now, I don't know what happened. But I'm pretty sure that guy probably passed away not long after, because that's usually what happens. But
Mhm.
that chokes me up, even if I think about it today. So it's something like that. It's very emotional because it's more realistic, you
Yeah.
know? Uh, And it's something that can happen. And I think about that, like with your mom and all. It's like there's a point, if we're together forever, there's a point where one of us is going to go. There's a point where we're all going to go. At some point, death is inevitable. But it's like solid realization when it actually does hit, and you're looking for that affirmation saying, is she gone? I'm pretty sure the dude knew she was, but I think he was just looking for that, solid, final nail in the coffin, so to speak, in a very dark, humorous way. But that's basically how I deal with things. But those are the thing. That's like the one thing that still messes with me is something like that. I don't know why I still get choked up over that.
Mhm.
I hope I answered a question right.
No, you definitely did. And
Yeah.
I love talking to you guys because it just, I feel like my brain's constantly coming up just with different things and different questions for you guys. Um, it, and it's interesting too to hear different points of views because I worked and I'll make this quick, I worked in geriatrics for a while, and it is hard to see when you're seeing those couples. A lot of those couples were together 50, almost 60 years, and to see that, it is heartbreaking. But I, as you were talking about what you have experienced, especially with those two incidents, the one thing that my question for you is, do you think how you handle and how you cope with it is how you see it? So where Hannah lived hers, it was first person, she lived it, she went through that trauma, it was happening to her. Whereas you, Gary, you saw it while you experienced it. It wasn't something that happened to you directly. Do you think that changes the way you can cope with things? Or like Hannah, I don't know if you've had experiences where it's you witnessed it.
Mm.
Does that change how you might cope with something?
I'll let you go first.
Yeah, that's a good question because, yeah, you're talking about two separate things. Yeah, where Hannah went through something and it happened to her, where mine was more external, where I was more of a witness to it. So, everybody is an individual. Everybody's going to be affected by things in their own individual personal ways. Some people, it's not going to affect them at all. Some people that are not being affected by it are sometimes more psychologically messed up from it, I believe. Uh, but yeah, you're going to handle these things different. Like I could say I maybe had some, I don't know, traumas that had happened to me, not as extreme, anywhere near as extreme as Hannah. But yeah, my everything I dealt with was all external. And again, if you remember, I said I went into that wanting to get into it. So that's one difference to deal with it as to where you're actually the victim. If
Mhm.
a victim of trauma, you are going to deal with it differently because yeah, it's more personal. It's more of a personal attack, and how you handle or deal with it is going to really be up to the individual. It's easy for me to laugh off um, what I've seen and dealt with, but I mean, listen, honestly, I know you don't know much there, Brittany, but Hannah and I, we joke all the time. And Hannah and I, we like joke sexually,
We do. We
we
do.
really
We're
do,
fucked
like
up.
hardcore. And sometimes that is a defense mechanism too. And it's an easy way to deal with that.
Mhm.
Sometimes because now knowing more of the backstory on Hannah, I sometimes look at it, I say, "Ooh, did I go too far?" With the joke. But then we try to go further. I mean, it doesn't stop, but that can be healthy. I don't care what therapists say. I think that can be healthy.
Yeah. If anything ever gets to, I'm like, okay, too much, too much.
Yeah, yeah, and but I don't stop either. That's just a sickness that I have too. We all have messed up things. In my head, I just see pushing the limits as no big deal. I don't know where to stop. Is that a problem? Probably. Do I need help? Most
Probably.
definitely. But hey, again, I think it's just my way of dealing with stuff, where I respect Hannah. I know where she's coming from. I know when I'm pushing it too much, but at the same time, it's definitely something that we're using as a defense mechanism for
Mhm.
something.
So with me, I have experienced a couple things similar to, Gary's experience where you're kind of like on the outside looking in. I used to work at a truck stop, and um I think I was already in heightened emotions because an old friend of mine just a couple days prior had lost his brother due to a drug overdose. So I was already, I feel like, in a heightened emotional state because, I knew this, I knew his brother. And it's, he was my friend was like my best friend at the time. So, I went there, I helped him have like a shoulder to cry on, grieve. And then I think it was a couple days after that had happened, um, I was working at a truck stop and there was this suspicious guy. And my assistant manager was like, "Oh, just keep an eye on him, like keep an eye on him." And I was like, "Hey, like 30 minutes went by and I was like, I don't think he came out of the bathroom. Like, I don't know what's going on." So, I had asked one of the truck drivers, I was like, "Hey, like, is any of the stalls like closed or anything like that? Like, is there anyone in the bathroom?" Because he had just came out. And he's like, "Yeah, there's like the handicap stall." So I had went in there, knocked to make sure that there was no one else that went in. And I propped the door open so men knew that there was a woman in there. And I looked under the stall and he was just laying on the ground. So I crawled under the stall and unlocked it and pushed the door open. And there a guy was unconscious. He had one of our plastic spoons and he had overdosed in our bathroom. So for me, I immediately went into panic mode. I like ran out and I was like, call 911. Like, I don't know what's going on. And I'm on the phone, like 911's like trying to tell me, like, you need to check this. I was like, I'm not touching him because, like, I'm in fight or flight mode at this point in time. I'm like, I don't know if he's going to wake up. I don't know if he's going to attack me or stab me, like, I don't know. Like, I don't feel comfortable doing this. And, um, as soon as the EMS got there, and the police, they like asked me to like go into the bathroom, like where he was and everything like that. And I watched them administer the Narcan and they had to do it 3 times in order for him to come back. And he just went rage. And they had to like strap him down and everything like that. But I think in that moment, I was like, it was like an outside type trauma thing for me because it was just like my mind immediately went to like my friend's brother and how he died. He didn't get Narcan. He didn't get the chance to maybe better himself. You know, he left behind a 3-year-old son. So it was just something very traumatic for me. You know, the cops were asking me questions and I was just like sobbing, choking up. And I wasn't even sobbing at the fact that, you know, I just witnessed that necessarily. I think it was just something for me where all in my head, I was just like thinking of my friend's brother and how, you know, I kind of got selfish in that point. I felt like, and I was just like, why couldn't it have been him who was saved instead of just this junkie who's probably going to do it in a Rutter's bathroom next week or something like that? You know, so it's one of those things. And, you know, with most employers, they do the EAP program. So I talked to somebody for that, but it was just still something that I had to, you know, process. But I will say, as far as, you know, if Gary goes, as you know, it's just something you're outside looking in. I felt like that was one instance where, you know, I had to work through it a little bit, but once I kind of worked through it for like a week or something, it was just something that was like in the past for me. You know, it didn't directly affect me. Um, but you know, still to this day, I like think about it and I'm like, holy shit, like wow, like I was in like, you know, I was involved in something like that. So, but it's not something that, you know, stopped me in my tracks or anything.
Real quick, professional advice. Um, Always find a way to climb over the stalls because the most traumatic portion of that is the fact that you crawled
On
on
a
a
bathroom
bathroom
floor.
floor.
I know.
Yeah, that bothered me. So yeah,
It's
always
okay because
climb over.
I cleaned those bathrooms and you know my ass used bleach.
I still want to do it.
I know. But what like the stalls were so high. So
I
I
would have
can't.
gotten over. I would have somehow gotten over,
Okay.
or I would have, broke it down, or just say, "Hey, sorry for your luck."
I just see you jump in a stall,
Yeah, yeah,
legs kicking.
His
I've done
face
it.
would fucking fly in the toilet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've done it. Not, I never went face first in the toilet, but I jumped over him because I'm not going underneath. I'm not
I
going
went underneath.
there.
I'm a midget. I'm 5'1". You think I'm gonna fuck? But yeah, that's
Yeah.
just like one instance where that I've had something outside looking in.
Did you find it hard to like calm, and I'm asking this and it might not be the right way, but like to calm down or to kind of ground yourself after that? Like, did it take
Oh yeah, I
you?
definitely went home. I definitely went home. I didn't finish my shift. I was pretty shaken up, and especially because like the one person that I wanted to talk to about it was my friend at the time, but I wasn't, you know, his brother's death was so fresh that I was like, I'm not gonna put him through that. Um, but it just made me just like think like, you know, like you look at that person and you're like, wow, like you're given a chance and you're probably just gonna go out and do the same thing. Where as far as, you know, his brother, I mean, yeah, he had the choice and he did it, but like he left, you know, he was trying to get better and he left behind, you know, a child. And, you know, I think just knowing them personally and, you know, being around their family, it just kind of hit me a little bit hard, but it was really hard for me to ground for a while. You know, I think for the next couple days after it, I was just like really shaken up. But like I said, after, you know, just going through like EAP, just kind of talking about it and like, you know, someone validating me saying like, you know, my feelings and thoughts about it were valid. I was just kind of like, okay, yep, this is just something I need to move on from. I can't change it. You know, I can't go back in time and, you know, magically be 40 minutes away and give him Narcan. You know, this is what it is. This was, you know, with me, it's like, I was like, you know, was God's plan, you know, and that was it, you know?
I think that's, I had one experience, probably it was 22, where I was safe. I knew I was safe, but it was what was thought to be an active shooter. And I just remember I kept telling my brain, like, you're fine, or telling myself, you're fine, you're safe, nothing happened to you. And I just remember like I couldn't sleep. It's amazing what the brain can do when you go through something like that, even when you tell yourself you're okay or you talk to yourself about it's still that brain, for me at least, can just be my downfall. So
Yeah. I had, when I first started dating my husband, so 10 years ago, you probably remember this. I was at a Halloween party.
Keep going.
Yeah. And he's like, I don't recall.
Yeah,
I was
I
at a
agree.
Halloween party and my brother-in-law was with this girl at the time who had a stalker. And he ended up showing up to this Halloween party and
Oh, I remember.
my brother-in-law and the kid, fought it out. And this kid got jumped. And so me being like the caring person that I am, like I'm like, okay, enough's enough. Like everybody stop, like I don't want someone to get murdered, like so I had like picked him up and like just started walking him to like the driveway. And it was like a long driveway. We were in like country freaking Delta or something. I don't even remember. And um he pulled a gun on me. He pulled a gun on
Oh,
me. Yes. And I immediately went into panic mode. I immediately just started swinging. Like I was just like, if I'm gonna die right now, like I don't know, like I'm gonna fight at least. So um I started wailing on him even more. I was like trying to push him because like the driveway was like one of those driveways where it was like you have to stay on the driveway, otherwise there's woods and you're gonna go into a ditch. So I just started like pushing him and pushing him to just try to get him like, and he didn't know what he was doing. Like I don't think this guy, like I don't know if he stole someone's gun or something like that, but he went to load like cock the gun or whatever and the clip fell out. And I just remember diving on the ground and like grabbing the clip and just like running. And as I'm running, my husband um was like running towards him and he just like grabbed the gun and just hit the guy with it. And at that moment, I think my adrenaline was so high that I like convinced my brain, like I was like, this is it. Like, yeah, like I just don't know what happened in my brain. Like, it's so hard to explain even to this day, like 9.5 years later. I was like, you need to go. And I just saw black and I collapsed. Like I completely went into an like a like my adrenaline I guess just knocked me the hell out. And I remember coming to, and it was my husband's best friend at the time, like he picked me up and he had put me in the bed of his truck and he was like, you're going to be okay, you're going to be okay. I had blood all over me from this guy. um and he had like punched me in my face and everything like that because like I said, I was fighting him, so he was fighting me back. And I just remember like hopping, like after I came to, like we all just got in the truck and I like went to my husband's parents' house at the time, and they were like, like we can't call the cops, like my brother-in-law, like he's gonna go to jail, like like, and I was like no he's not, he was like, you know what I mean, like even if so, like I need like this guy pulled a gun on me, like like he assaulted me. So I ended up going to my house, and that's when Gary and my mom got involved and they called the police and they took pictures of my, like, and descriptions and just like, the story and everything like that. And I think the state ended up going after him. I didn't have to appear in court or anything like that, but it was just like one of those moments where that's a trauma that I experienced in my life, but it's not something at the time it affected me, but it's a trauma that I think I've completely 100% gotten past. Like it doesn't affect me anyway. I will say I feel uncomfortable sometimes around guns, but um, I think that might be just like one of like those trauma things that I did keep from that event, but it's not something where I'm like, no, don't bring a gun near me. Like he has guns. Like I've shot in a gun plenty times after that happened. But it's just like one of those things where it's like every time I'm around a gun, I just feel a little bit eerie. But I think it's something that I'm completely over. Um, so yeah.
it's
He racked the magazine which is stupid. That means you didn't have one in the chamber, because if he really did need to defend himself, he would have been dead.
Yeah.
And it's a magazine, not a clip. Thank you. Sorry to correct you. It's just
Sorry.
my pet peeve.
I know that is a pet peeve. But yeah,
Uh,
I don't know. Like, and it's just like, as far as that goes, like, how did you cope with that? You know, me coming home and that
I thought it was pretty cool.
you did?
Yeah,
Oh,
of course,
that's
man.
fucking awesome. Man.
Yeah.
I was like 16 at the time, 17.
And I knew you were in Delta because we had a tracker on your
Yeah.
phone.
Yeah.
he's just proud of you that you defended yourself. So
Oh, I was like fight or
Mhm.
flight. I was like, I'm gonna go down with a fucking fight, man.
Yeah, that's what I thought was pretty cool.
And I mean, I
Yeah.
alerted. I screamed on the top of my lungs that there was a gun. So, but I think in that moment, it was just like one of those things where I'm surprised that I'm over it the way I am. Cause like if he knew what he was doing, I could have been dead, you know?
Yeah,
Oh,
but
yeah.
one in the chamber.
Yeah. But
Dummy.
yeah, dumbass.
Well, I'm so glad you're still here. So
Thank you.
So I think my final question with all of this, and just to wrap it up, and I know you both briefly talked on it, but other than humor, dark humor, because I myself use that as a coping mechanism, is there anything else that you've used or done to help you cope with things that have happened in the past that have been traumatic or hard for you to handle?
Mm.
Well, I mean, I've gone down some roads. I've spoken about them. But to me, the way I cope now, everything I do now, I deal with meditation. I've been using it for years, and it just keeps me focused in reality. Um, and now that I've learned more and more about it, and I've gone deeper and deeper into it, it's my escape. I can use it at any time. There's no right or wrong time to do it. I could just get into that state and I could stay there. And not only mental health, but it helps physically as well. Uh, I can't talk about it enough. I mean, that's how I started podcasting. My first podcast was Third Eye Meditation, and it was just an extension of a business I did. We're teaching meditation, being a meditation coach. The benefits outweigh everything. I mean, it's just amazing where you can go inside of your mind, heal all wounds, physically or mentally, and then be able to just deal with life just by seeing things from a different perspective. And that's basically where our podcast,
Yeah.
it's a message. You're seeing things from a different perspective most of the time. But that's how I cope. And yeah, I run into some situations, more mental issues now and then. I have my breakdowns every now and then, and that's just accumulation, because over the years, yeah, I can say I hide it very well, and I got to deal with it every day. I got to be the strong one for her mom. It takes its toll on you. It really does. Who's going to help the helpers? And I've suffered a couple times myself with breakdowns just from dealing with, everything that I have to deal with. But I always turn to the meditation to get myself turned back around and get back into the place where I need to be.
Yeah. And I think to add to that, um, I think me and Gary have gotten so, close over a long span of time that like I know when he's in his moods or when he needs, his own, he needs to meditate and get through it. So it's kind of like a vibe. Like I read his energy very well where I'm like, okay, I know he's having off. So like if I see him outside, but I can feel that he's just in one of those moods, it's just like I'll be like, okay, I'm going to keep Caden inside for a little bit. Let Gary have his time outside, let the environment help him heal the way he needs to heal. And so I think with that to add, like, I feel like I read that very well with
You
you.
do. I will say you do. I recognize that. And I'll tell you
Yeah.
now, I do appreciate that. The fact that you do recognize it, and the fact that you just let me,
Yeah.
remain.
I'm like, he's got to
Mm,
be.
yeah, I do. I totally appreciate that. I
Yeah.
appreciate anybody who is like that. And it's true. You need to pick up on that.
Hmm.
Like you, Brittany, I picked up on your moods and your,
Oh, yeah.
that. I read that. I know what's going on. That's why I mentioned the meditation to you. I'll
Hmm.
teach you. Don't worry about it. But yeah, we do. We have that bond, and it does help. And that's how we can help each other too. It's like I don't need to I know when I need to intervene with you.
Yeah.
because I've seen you. I know when you should be left alone, but at the same time, I know when I need to intervene. And so
Yeah.
we read each other very well. So
Yeah. And I think for me, hmm, also before I get into me, I think too, with me and Gary both, I think we've seen it a lot over a little over a year living together. I think when it comes to coping, maturing has a lot to do with it. And I think over like something that everyone needs to remember is that you can never be 100% mature. There is always maturing that people are going you're going to mature every day of your life if you choose to. So with me and Gary, I think we've realized is that when we come into shitty situations, we're like, not to sound cliche, but we're like, it is what it is. And I mean that as far as the aspect of it happened. We can't change what happened, but this is how we can work through it. This is what we can do with the card that we were dealt, and we move forward with it. Because there's no sense in dwelling about, something that's happened. Um, you just have to kind of, have your moment. I'm not saying don't have your moment, but have your moment and then come up with your game plan on how you're going to continue with what just happened.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's you're living in the present moment. You guys
Yeah.
deal sometimes with what is going on, but that moment's going to quickly
Continue.
become the future too.
Yeah.
And so everything's going to have its change.
Yeah.
The pendulum swings. It goes from one extreme all the way to the other, and
Yeah.
that's just how life is. And
Yeah.
once you realize that, you
Yeah.
always remember, and there's going to be the upswing.
Yeah.
Things are going to get better real soon.
Yeah. And I think with me, with as far as like going through things that, especially that like my traumas, um, like something for me, like when my best friend passed away, um, I set myself a guideline that I was not going to visit his grave right away. It was just something that I knew wasn't good for me. I know that sounds so weird because, usually that will help people, but it was just something that I was like, no, I can't do this right now. Like, I'm going to just wait a year. So I did. I waited a year. And when I went, it was like I had all of this like built up stages of trauma that I went through, and I could just sit there and, talk about like this is how I went through the anger part of grief. This is how I went through like the sadness, and this is where the how I am in the current state of grief. So I think that helped me with that. And I guess you could say this was kind of dark of me to do, but when it happened, I was on vacation, but when I got back, I just felt this strong desire and need. I needed to see where it happened. I needed to go there and just witness, where his soul left, where his soul left his body. It was very hard for me. I think in that moment, I thought I made a mistake in doing it. But now I look back at it is that like, you know, I saw where, I saw the last house he ever saw before he went. I saw, oh, like the tree that was in front of the house, where the pole was had a birdhouse on it. Like he might have saw that. So I think for me now, like looking back on that, it was just like in that moment, like spiritually, like I was with him. Um, so that's one way that I kind of dealt with that. Um, I'll say that I'm still not over it. It's something that I struggle with every day. His anniversary of his death is actually coming up. So I've been in a really bad spot mentally. Um, but it's gotten, I don't want to say easier, but it's gotten more manageable for me. I think, living on because that's what he would want me to do. And, my son is named after him. And, just showing my son spots where, we used to hang out or telling him stories. I think that is what helps me a lot with coping is just like remembering things and refreshing my mind on it and bringing the positive out of the negative situation.
Well, you're getting me teary-eyed over here.
I'm sorry.
No. That's not, I mean, it's not hard, but I think that's actually really good, like advice to kind of go through. Sorry, I just kind of hit home for me. So
Well, then good.
I,
Let's ask this then, Brittany. What are your coping skills? What are you doing to cope?
for the longest time, suppressed everything. So, I suppressed everything and I did very dark humor. Like you don't get to see this side of me. Well, you probably see parts of it, but I have a very smart ass attitude. And I'm also very like, I'm a huge pervert. Like I'm a walking pervert. Like that I can twist anything sexually and turn it into some type of like sexual joke. And so that was something that I always did to cover it up. But when I hit rock bottom and I had to find a way to process it, when I was going through therapy, what actually helped me was reliving some of that, talking through it, um, getting it out instead of holding it in. Because there was a period of my life in 2011. I look back and I don't know how I made it out. And I think that's why everything came crashing down in 2021, because I realized that it had been 10 years that I've just been carrying all of this baggage and like weight. Um, so at first, what really helped me was talking it through with friends, family, people who had similar experiences. So I didn't feel alone. Now, a lot of the things that I've been doing, and one thing I can honestly say, Hannah, that I've pulled from the podcast is I've been writing myself notes on the mirror. And I know I mentioned this, but I think it's so important because when I find a good quote that resonates, I'll write it, I'll leave it up for a few days, and I'll remember like, it's okay. This is temporary. You have to get through it. So for me now is finding those little quotes and finding those things that make me smile. Like I have my son. He's everything I could ever ask for and more. I have a wonderful support system of family and friends. I have a roof over my head, food in our bellies, and I have a great job. So at the end of the day, those are things I just reflect on what I'm grateful for. Not so much like, oh, you have the nice car or the nice house, because I live in an apartment, but I have a roof over my head. That's a lot more than some people have. So trying to find those things that, yes, right now it may be difficult, it's hard, but this is how keep moving forward. Don't stop.
Yeah.
And it's hard too, because for me, it's a fine line. I love to overthink everything. So when something bad happens, I can play it in my head for 2 or 3 weeks, pretty much at least once a day. Like, oh, I could have reacted this way, or I could have done this better, or did I offend this person? Or so for me, it's finding that balance of acknowledging it, but not in a way dwelling on it.
Yeah.
And finding a way that you can learn from it in the future.
Which I think is great. And I think you're on like the right track. And I think that's important for you to hear too, because, sometimes you're like, oh God, I just like, sometimes everyone's just like, I don't feel like this is working for me. But as long as you keep up with it and, you realize that whether the bad you right now feel like the bad is outweighing your good, you kind of have to, I always say this, you have to slap yourself back and be like, no, my good is there. Like my good is going to shine. So I love that. And I applaud you for that.
Thank you. I think it's easy. Sorry, Gary.
No, you're fine. Go for it.
I, I I think it's easy for me right now where I could be in such a negative spot. And I was in that little negative rut for a while, and you pointed it out. And I was trying to think, how did I pull myself out? And I'm not sure how I pulled myself out, but I've definitely noticed a shift in myself the past like 2 weeks, just with how I am, how I'm responding to things. So Maybe it's just from listening to you guys.
And I will say, before, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off,
No,
but I
go
will
ahead.
say I have the weirdest piece of advice that I don't really like to share, but I guess I'm going to share. Um, I found that with coping and, stuff that, puts me down is I'm going to go out and I'm going to do something that makes me feel uncomfortable. And I know that sounds so weird, but I find that if I step out of my comfort zone, I am focusing on stepping out of my comfort zone. So I'm not thinking of the thing that's putting me down. And who knows, like 9 times out of the 10, when I'm doing that, I find something that I actually really liked and I didn't know why I was holding myself back from doing it. Um, so then it creates this positivity and just this exploding energy in me. And I'm like, oh, wow, what I was dwelling about earlier today doesn't seem so big anymore. I've also, I've said this before, um, written my traumas down and burn them. I love doing that. Um, Sometimes I write out the events that have happened to me in detail, like you said, like just talking through it and kind of like reliving it and just to speak it out. And I've written it in a journal and I've taken it outside, poured gasoline on it, and set the whole journal on fire. Um, that's helped me tremendously. I do that every so often, a couple of years or something. Um, but yeah, doing something uncomfortable, like, um, I never would have pictured myself going to speak to a psychic or anything like that. And I did that a couple years back and I was like, holy shit, wow. Like I was so uncomfortable with the idea of this and I did it. And it put me into a place where I was like, wow, like I actually kind of loved that. Like and I feel like that really opened me up with like the whole metaphysical, to be honest.
And of course, as I'm listening to your coping, what works is what you feel the most comfortable with. And yeah, sometimes you need the extra advice and sometimes you don't. It's all going to depend again on the individual. Like Hannah, you doing something different. It's all about focus.
Hmm.
That's what it's about. And that's exactly what meditation is. It's focus. You're focusing on something other than what's troubling you. So even if it's something physical that you're doing, it could still be a form of meditation because you're
Hmm.
focusing or concentrating on something else. And this way it's taking your mind away from the things that are bothering you and it shifts everything and puts you back in a line. That's why I want to get you into it.
I'm just sitting here thinking, like, I definitely respect you and admire you for being honest and talking about this and how you cope with things. Because for men, sometimes it's like, oh, everything's just hunky dory. I'm going to say it's just your chemical makeup. Men tend to sometimes let things go easier, but not taking away from your mental health
Mhm.
as well, because that's really important. And June's men's mental health awareness month. So I think it's important when the men of your podcast are listening to this, maybe this is one avenue for them with you talking about meditation that they can explore. And I think it's also important too that you have that person, Hannah. I'm sure you have other people as well that know you and can kind of help you out of that.
Yeah, and that's I was unaware of men's mental health every month.
It's something new. I
So
know.
I'm out of it, but it is. It's funny because I know there's been a lot of talk. I've been hearing all the podcasts as far as male, female, and all that. We are all chemically wired differently.
Hmm.
And yeah, we do tend, and I think environmentally too, in the way we're raised and brought up, we do have certain expectations as far as, who's supposed to be, who's going to feel the mental health more, where men tend to suck it back a lot more and swallow it a lot.
He hasn't met
It's, yeah,
my husband.
yeah, exactly. But there is a point you're going to get to that you can swallow it so much, but it's eventually it's all going to come back up and usually comes back up in the worst ways. So realizing that and recognizing that, it doesn't make you less of a man to admit, say, hey, listen, I could use some help. I need
Mhm.
somebody to talk to. And I think as men, I think we also should be able to support one another in that role instead of putting them down. I mean, yeah, we do joke about it a lot and, say, suck it up, man. But I think we're seeing a shift in that as to
Mhm.
where, hey, listen, there's really is a serious issue with this and that you do need to be more open. So I appreciate you bringing that up because, yeah, I don't sometimes think about it as, oh, I'm a man. I mean, it's just sometimes I think, especially if you're living with somebody who has a lot of issues, you have to remain strong for that person. And it's very, very difficult to do that and keep yourself together because that person's going to feel even the slightest little crack.
Especially my mother.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. So if I got to be strong all the time, there comes a time I got to turn around. And in order to release that, I need to talk about it or I need to do something. And that's why I turn to meditation because it helps center me a lot more.
Mhm.
I know when to talk about it. I know when to break down. I've just learned, hey, listen, if I'm going to break down, it's a release and it's perfectly normal. So I appreciate you bringing that up though, Brittany.
I think too, what helps is that my mom's like a healer. So my mom senses it regardless if he tries to meditate through it
Mhm.
or if he's in a moment where
Oh,
he can't, like he tries to suppress it or
mhm.
something. I think my mom knows. So my mom usually is like, okay, come here. And she'll do her little healing on him. And then it really sets him at ease. Like I've seen my mom do it and he just ends up like being a complete state of like subconscious meditation at that point
Mhm.
in time, which is amazing and incredible to see. I don't think my mom understands how gifted she really is.
Mhm.
Um, and also with me, I am so anti-feminist.
Mhm.
So I always try to advocate for men's mental health because I think it's just as equally as important as women's.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think that, and Gary, you can probably attest to this, there's definitely been a huge shift where men used to be the sole providers and they're still looked on as like to be a main provider, but there's definitely been a shift in the openness and how men are perceived and just really understanding nowadays that words can really hurt.
Mhm.
Like words, actions, things can really hurt and acknowledging that instead of trying to suppress it. So, but
I think with me and you too, like we're both raising boys and we're like, we don't want to raise our boys to like the standard of what a man should be. My son is full of emotions. Sometimes I'm like, holy fucking shit, what am I doing here? But I'd rather him be that way and learn that it's okay to have emotions and it's okay to cry, um, than to, be that stereotype that people want men to be.
yeah, I had a principal, my son was in second grade. His principal, Chase, my son got in trouble. Um, I just a bit of my son, he has ADHD and autism. So working through that, helping him like grow and develop as a person. But um, the principal told him, Chase got in trouble, brought him into his office. My son started crying and he was like, "You're not going to cry in my office." And when my son told me this, and coincidentally, the principal pulled me in that day, Chase told me that. And I looked him in the eye and I asked him that. And he was like, "Yeah, I told him he's not crying in my office." I was like, "Absolutely not. He is allowed to feel whatever emotions he wants to feel." One, he's 7. Two, if he wants to cry, he can cry. He's still
Yeah.
developing these things. Do not tell him how he can or cannot feel in that present moment. So definitely advocating for him as well.
Yeah.
Like with that was a great point. Advocating for him as a boy that he's okay. He's allowed to have those emotions. He's
Yeah.
allowed to feel that. So
Yeah, everybody deals with them differently. I have different views on that. Um, I do feel that, yeah, even as a man, I think we need to turn around and realize when we need the help. But at the same time, I'm also a big advocate. You've heard me say it. Never show your weakness. And this doesn't just apply to men, it applies to females too. Never show your weakness. And crying is still a weakness. It's fine to cry. There's a time and a place to do it. And this is just my opinion. I know I might be beat up on that, but
I'm gonna beat his ass later.
yeah, but I do firmly feel that, yeah, male or female, again, you got to be strong, because a lot of this mental health and mental health issues I see is coming up more and more and more. But I also see that we're becoming weaker and weaker as humans. I think we need to start building our strength back, and we might need to start from square one and build it back up. This way we're able to overcome, because we don't know what's causing these problems. We don't know what causes mental health. We don't know what's doing it. The suppression, sure, but there needs to be a release where you just got to be able to release it, but there's a time and place.
Mm.
I just am a firm believer in just,
See,
just
sometimes with
staying
me,
strong.
I just cry if I'm upset. But when I'm angry, it's because I have to cry or I'm gonna go Hulk mode. So I'd rather cry than go to jail.
Well,
It,
depends.
I
I'm
mean, there was
jail.
a time, a time a month ago where at work too, I think I cried all day for like, it was probably a good day and a half in the office, that I could not for the life of me pull myself together. And I kept saying, Brittany, get it together. And I
Mhm.
just could not
I
do
get
it.
that.
So I showed my weakness all day in that office, and
Feel
you can see my face. Like, I wear my heart on my sleeve. So that's,
I cry at work all, and that's only because I'm there.
I
Trust me.
cry for you some days when I walk by
Yeah.
your office, and I'm like, I feel
Yeah.
so bad for him.
The levels of stupid I got to deal with.
But
All right.
well,
Well,
Brittany, thank you so much
yeah,
for coming
thank
on.
you. I
yeah.
really appreciate it. This was so relaxed. This is the most relaxed podcast I ever done.
Yeah.
I like this to be interviewed and talked to. It helps to develop the topic a lot more. So we appreciate everybody for listening to this. We appreciate you, Brittany. Once again, eyeopenersociety.podbean.com. That's our website. It's got all of our episodes on there. But we're on all major platforms and minor ones, and we're on YouTube too as well. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook. Top of our webpage. Don't forget to check out our sponsorship links, and don't forget to buy us a coffee too if you do so. Wishing, if you don't have any money like most of us, then share our show and spread the word. And we hope everybody has a great time, and we will see you next Monday.
See ya.